Welcome back to my English classroom. I'm Professor Sumita Roy, former head Department of English, Osmania University, Hyderabad. We have two videos on listening for the mid-level people who are able to use language but want to improve their English. In the first of these videos, we had two short stories. I told you, based on those two exercises, how to listen. I mentioned to you also the concept of active listening. Listening for meaning first, and then listening for expression, for language, for improving your ability to speak English. This is what we require to do. Now, short stories are different because the meaning is very clear, the narration is direct, we can understand immediately what the story is all about. Poetry is slightly more difficult. So to understand poetry, that is the content part of listening, might take a little difficulty. It might take more effort because if I read out the poem to you, like I did with the stories, without showing you the text, you might have problems in understanding what is being read. You might get a gist of it, but you might not be able to understand sentence by sentence. Each sentence or each line might not be clear. That is the first step for listening, that every word, every expression is clear to you. The meaning is available to you of every expression that is used in the passage. So when you listen, if you stumble, that is, if you have a problem with any part of it, stop it there, go back and listen to it again and again. Sometimes we have to do this because the audio might not be very clear. Sometimes we do this if you play Antakshari and all. You listen to the same song 20, 30, 40 times, then you're able to sing it beautifully. You can do that with some old English songs. They are available on YouTube. Many of the song videos have the words also. The words are very powerful, very good, very clear. There is a song, "Mother of mine, you gave to me all of my life to do as I please." All of us love our mothers. So when we talk about the mother being the person who has given us our life, who has given us everything that we are today, then it's a small child singing to the mother. There are so many hymns, Christian hymns, beautiful words, beautiful music, and excellent for learning English. They are all poetry. So I thought, for a good variety of expression, for your abilities to enhance your listening and also to, enhance your content understanding of listening, not only language understanding. Language in poetry is very, very superior. It is very good, very sophisticated, excellent language. From that language also, you can learn so much. Once more, I have chosen two poems. And these two, first, of course, the words might not be as many as in the story. The story is more elaborate. The poems might not be so elaborate, but they have a lot of points for you to learn the language. They have a lot of points for you to learn excellent vocabulary. You have rhythmic language. The two poems I've chosen are old poems, more than 100 years old, but they are very, very famous. And when you hear them, you get a feel. Maybe some of you also write poetry, maybe in your own language, but you know how specialized the poetic expression is. If you can do this, then you will be able to become more creative. Your language becomes more creative when you learn English from the poem which you have understood. You have understood the meaning very well. The meaning is appealing to all of us. But apart from the meaning, you have also learnt good language, good expression, good way of communication by reading poetry. So you can read this, you can listen, as I told you, to some songs on YouTube. Maybe in one of the videos I will make a list of those songs and tell you maybe 5 or 10 songs. If I give you, you can practice better. Now for the first poem. This is by a famous American poet, Robert Frost. Very often children use this for recitation competitions in schools. You might have come across this in your school or college textbook also. It's a very beautiful poem which has a very deep philosophic meaning, but a very musical language, simple but appealing. We are interested in the meaning, we are interested more in the language, and we are interested in seeing how Robert Frost can help us to learn better communication. The poem is called Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Now look at all the words. Stopping by. Stopping by means halting, taking some time off. And woods, usually we hear the word wood. Wood is an uncountable noun. We don't use wood, one wood as wood and two as woods. No. The word woods has a different meaning, and that is a forest, a place where there are many, many trees. And snowy evening. Snow, we know, is a noun. It's something which falls in the form of, white powdery substance when it is very cold. For us in Hyderabad, it's impossible to imagine. We don't get snow. But in cold places in the USA, you find a lot of snow. Snow falls in winter. And that too when? Snowy evening. So stopping by woods on a snowy evening. That is the title of the poem which we are going to listen to now. I will read it to you. Please listen carefully. Try to make meaning out of each line which I read. Try to get the entire meaning of the poem and the meaning of all the words and see how language is used. Remember, again and again, I'm reminding you about active listening. Put your whole energy, put your whole concentration into listening to English, as though you're going to absorb that English as a food for your brain. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. That is the end of the poem which you have heard. Now I would like you to spend a moment to think that what is this poem all about? Who is the speaker? What is the speaker describing? And What are the words they are used? Look at the musical use of language. If you speak language in a way which is inspiring, in a way which is attractive, in a way which, appeals to the listener, then you will be a powerful speaker. You don't need only conversation, you need listening also. Just now I received some messages. Please give me some conversation. Conversation is wonderful, but that is mechanical. Look at how much of communication, how much of good expression you can learn from poems. So this poem, let us see the words. You can see the words and I can speak to you a little about it. Here you can see the words of the poem I read out to you, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. You can see poetry is written in a different way than prose. When you had the lesson on short stories, it was written in continuation. There was no break. The break was of a paragraph, an entire unit, and then a break and a paragraph. This structure also is very important for you because in your career you will need to write a lot and you need to learn writing skills. Some of these videos will have writing skills, but that will be much, much later. Today we are only talking about listening, and when you are listening, you can learn many other things. Poetry is written in discrete units. Each line is different. The line might not be the end of the sentence. 2 lines might be one sentence. An entire 4-line unit is, here 4 lines, we call it a stanza. In prose, we call it paragraph. Many of you have been asking me, I got so many messages when I said I'm starting this channel. They said, Madam, please have literature also. So see, this is a part of literature. We call it prose passage division as paragraph. We call a poetry passage, which is division. Here you have 4 units. They are 4 stanzas. Another thing in poetry, this is old, as you can see at the end of the page, 1923. 101 years are over. You can see how things have changed. There are many things you'll find here which are no longer used in the same sense. But you must remember that the music is there. We call it as rhyme or we call it as rhythm. This is a word. If you don't know it, you must try practicing it. If you know it already, you see how it is used. In the first stanza, you find no, end of first line, though, end of second line, snow, end of fourth line. They end in the same way. They give a music to your ears. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though, no, and though the music is there. To watch his woods fill up with snow, again the same sound. So you can see in all the 4 stanzas you will find first, second, fourth, first, second, fourth. They are of the same sound ending. This is called rhyme or rhythm. There is rhythm in the lines also. You see, whose woods these are, I think I know. If you know music, you can easily set it to music. You can put notations. That is poetry. All our speaking, especially a language like English, has its own rhythm. We call it the stress pattern. We call it intonation. So that rhythm we can learn from poetry. When you listen to recitation of poetry, you will find that you are getting benefited by, the correct intonation pattern, the correct pattern of stress, which is coming to your ears so that it gets embedded in your mind. You have a recall of that. You can replay whatever you've heard in your own speaking when you are using it. Now, woods, I already told you, is, something which is not related to wood only, as we know, what is made, tables and chairs, furniture is made out of wood, that is got from the forest. It is by cutting trees, etc. But the word woods here implies that it's a forest land. It's a land where there are a whole lot of trees. If you visit the USA, you will find that, they have a huge green coverage. You can go for miles and miles where you see only trees, huge trees, and you don't see any human beings or anybody else. So this is a question the poet, the person who's speaking in the poem, maybe the poet or maybe somebody else, is telling us, whose woods these are, I think I know. What does it mean? I think I know means I'm not very sure. You can use this expression whenever you are not sure. I think I know. Very often I hear people using thinking. I'm thinking. That is, if you're doing the job, you're sitting quietly and you're lost in your thoughts, you're inside your mind, you're not aware of the outside, that usage is correct. But if you say I'm thinking in certain contexts, that is not correct. I'm thinking I know whose woods these are. That structure is not correct. Many verbs do not have that ing form. So if you have this as a mistake which you do, then reading this line immediately corrects your mistake. Remember that unless you correct what you know, you can never improve. All of us know some English. If we know wrong English, it's very difficult to correct it. But these lessons which I'm putting for you on the YouTube videos are lessons to make you self-aware that yes, these are the mistakes I make and this is how I can correct those mistakes. So this you have to remember to do. Unless you do that, you will never be able to benefit. Now you see that, there is the whole scene, it's like a story. There is one person and there is a horse. This person is going somewhere, going home possibly, because he says, I have miles to go before I sleep. Where do you sleep? You sleep at home. Sleep is to take rest. Sleep is to relax. Sleep is not only to go home and get into bed. So sleep, he's on his way, he or she is on his or her way to the house, many miles away. Miles imaginary also, because here miles might mean a long life. If this is a young person speaking, they say, I have miles to go before I sleep. Sleep is always compared to the end of life also. So sleep in one case is rest. Poetry has a lot of philosophic meaning. We call it as the, implied meaning. Implied means it's not spoken. It is not the dictionary meaning. If you look at sleep, you get a different meaning. So the story is like this, that this person on a horse is going. Suddenly he sees a beautiful wood. And these beautiful woods attract him. He thinks that, okay, all these woods are not mine, it's somebody else's, but they are very beautiful. So I would like to stop here and admire the beauty. And I think the owner will not know, He will not see me stopping here. So if he doesn't see me stopping here, he won't scold me. He won't say, what are you doing on my land? Privacy is very important. In India, we have less of this. Your neighbor walks into your house and says hello, very friendly. Here you can't do that. When you are talking about a different culture, you have to go by the nuances of that culture. So this is an American poem. The poet is describing an American scene by saying that, the snow is falling. I have come to a deep forest and I know whom it belongs to. But I think his house is very far away in the village. Therefore, if I stop and admire his woods, I don't think he should have an objection. That's what he has said in the first 4 lines. Now, why am I doing this for you? Because when you read poetry, I want you to put it in simple English sentences in a prose form, in a form of a story, so that your listening is helping you to speak. You are listening to something, you're putting it into your own words, and then, of course, you have practice speaking. Yesterday I mentioned, in some other video I mentioned, that many of you say, I don't have a friend to practice with. So what if you don't have a friend? You have these lines in front of you, you have yourself. You read the lines, you speak to yourself. You say, no, I didn't like what I said. Now let me say it all over again. Use a few different words, a few different expressions, and go on speaking. In this way, you will find that by speaking to yourself, but speaking loudly so that you can hear whatever you are uttering, your ears should be able to hear the sound which you're making. Then you will get benefit. Of course, if you do that outside, somebody might laugh at you by saying, what are you madly speaking to yourself? So sit in a corner, practice. In the university, I would tell my students that the university has a huge area. You sit in some corner and practice with yourself. Don't worry about others making fun of your English. Because you want to learn, you have to face all the difficulties and you have to come up. Now, the next stanza is giving importance to the horse. So, my little horse, you see how the description is. The horse must think it strange. Today we don't use this word queer in this sense anymore. We don't say strange is synonym of queer. Queer has a different meaning. It has a gender meaning. So we don't use, that's a different meaning. In 2024, we cannot say queer is equal to strange. But Robert Frost in 1923 was using the language like that. If we read the language of the last 400 years, 500 years of English, it started with British English, then you find that there are a lot of changes. Many words have different meanings. Many words have become obsolete. New words get added all the time. So we have to keep that idea. So it says, the horse also is behaving like a human being. He says, my horse must be thinking, he was thinking earlier that I can stop here and enjoy. Now horse is also thinking. The must think, he says, I'm guessing again that the horse must be thinking. There is no farmhouse. Farmhouse is where, you can take rest. That is your home. So he says, there is no farmhouse. If it was not my house, at least some other house, some other hut, some farmer's place, I could have stopped and taken rest. But where am I stopping? He describes where he's stopping. The lake has no water now. It has all become ice. America has a lot of big lakes. I was told that the top layer becomes ice in winter. Of course, I haven't seen it because when I went, it was all, flowing water, very beautiful. But in winter, it's different. Now here, what is there? Between the woods and frozen lake, there is no farmhouse. And it is the darkest evening of the year because in certain places, very cold places, northern places, winter evenings are very short. We have in Hyderabad 6:30 the sun is setting. Almost throughout the year, maybe 6 or 6:30 or 6:45. But here, sometimes where we are talking about Robert Frost's poem, the geographic location, in winter, maybe 4 o'clock, the sun is down. In summer, maybe 9 o'clock, the sun is still there, a glow which we call twilight. Twilight is that glow, morning, dawn, evening, dusk. So the darkest evening of the year, I'm stopping and enjoying. My horse is thinking there's something wrong with me. I should be going home or I should go to a farmhouse to take rest. Not giving me. He gives us harness bells. I'm not concentrating now on grammar so much as I'm concentrating on vocabulary and rhythm. You can see I told you, shake, mistake, flake, queer, near, year, deep, sleep, sleep. all musical sounds. So you can try out a lot of sounds, all the words you know, put them together and make rhyming words. I told you that, in the earlier videos, not the mid-level videos, that you need a notebook for this. For all kinds of practice, have some book, and then you will get a lot of benefit from it. Now you see here, harness bell. Harness is what is tied to the horse. There is some kind of a belt which is tied to the horse. Usually they put a bell, then it shakes its head, and you know that the bells are ringing. So he says the ringing of the bell shows me that the horse thinks I've made some mistake, because there is no sound here, there is no human being here, there is no house here. What is the sound? He says the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. Downy is soft. Sweep is, the wind is going. It is when the snow falls, it looks as though it's just sweeping the ground. The wind, slow wind is there, easy wind. Flake is each, particle of snow. The woods are lovely, dark and deep. It seems Jawaharlal Nehru's favorite poem this was. So he says, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep. See, he concludes by saying, I can stop and enjoy life, but what about the promises I have to fulfill? And miles to go before I sleep. 2 times this is repeated. In poetry, it's called refrain. R-E-F-R-A-I-N. It might be a new word for some of you. So we learn vocabulary like this. We come across a new word, we go on practicing it, and then the word becomes clear to us. So I gave you a lot of ideas about this first poem. It took a long time, of course. Read it many times, and then you will come across many ideas. We will now move on to the second poem, which is much simpler, but much more. It has many more adjectives, a lot of variety of expressions. All of you must have heard of this poet, Sarojini Naidu, and a very simple poem by her, very popular poem for recitation also and for reading also, is titled Bangle Sellers. We have this poem, Bangle Sellers by Sarojini Naidu, which talks about a usual part of the Indian woman's dress, and that is what they wear around the wrist. This is called the bangle. So we have Sarojini Naidu describing, again in 4 stanzas, about the person who sells bangles, what kind of bangles are sold. Sarojini Naidu grew up in Hyderabad. Therefore, we have a lot of places where you get bangles. One whole market is there. It is called Chudi Bazaar. Chudi means bangle. So you can imagine that it is the Indian scene, the Hyderabadi scene, which you will find here. Let me read out to you quickly this poem. Bangle Sellers by Sarojini Naidu. Bangle sellers are we, who bear our shining load to the temple fair. Who will buy these delicate, bright, rainbow-tinted circles of light? Lustrous tokens of radiant lives, for happy daughters and happy wives. Some are meet for a maiden's wrist, silver and blue as the mountain mist. Some are flushed like the buds that dream on the tranquil brow of a woodland stream. Some are aglow with the bloom that cleaves to the limpid glory of new-born leaves. Some are like fields of sunlit corn, meet for a bride on her bridal morn. Some like the flame of a marriage fire, or rich with the hue of her heart's desire, tinkling, luminous, tender and clear, like her bridal laughter and bridal tear. Some are purple and gold-flecked grey. For her who has journeyed through life midway, whose hands have cherished, whose love has blessed, and cradled fair sons on her faithful breast, and serves her household in fruitful pride, and worships the gods at her husband's side. That is how the poem ends. This is the bangle seller selling the different types of bangles by describing which color is suitable for what age group, which color represents what part of a woman's life. It is almost like a series of ideas given by Sarojini Naidu, the little girl growing up and then, becoming a bride and a mother and then a matriarch of the family. All this description is given. Very musical language and full of adjectives. Let us see now the text of this. The text did not fit on a single side, so I have put the first two stanzas here. We will move on to the next slide for the next two stanzas. Let us see. Here, unlike Robert Frost, the number of lines are 6 in each stanza. In this column you have 6 lines, in this column you have 6 lines. Again, next slide you have 6 and 6. So number of stanzas are 4 like the earlier one, but this is an older poem. It's 1920 and it is about an Indian scene of bangle sellers. Usually there was a time when bangle sellers would go from place to place. So you can see how the bangle sellers are introducing themselves. Bangle sellers are we. Now see how the structure of the sentence is. Usually what we say, we are bangle sellers. The sentence structure is we are bangle sellers. I gave a lot of these exercises to beginners in the first video of lessons. You can all go back to that video and check. So we say we are students, we are teachers, like that. So we are bangle sellers, but this is poetry. So poetry has to make a point. What is the most important point here? The point is that bangle sellers are talking. Bangle sellers are selling. The bangle seller carrying the bangles and singing along, saying that these are the kind of bangles I'm selling. So they say bangle sellers are we, who bear our shining load to the temple fair. We are carrying. Bear here implies carry. Bear has many other meanings, but here we are taking what? Our weight, our load, our heavy package is shining because they're bangles, And where are we going? We are going to the temple fair. Usually on festival days, the temples have an exhibition. The temples have a lot of people visiting, and all the, hawkers and shopkeepers, they are full selling their wares there. Who will buy? Now they are asking customers. This is the usual way they seek customers. Come, a question, who will buy? You can see at the end question mark. Description, delicate, bright. Earlier we have shining. Look at all these adjectives. Rainbow tinted, circles. The bangle is in the form of a circle. You can see how it is completely circular. So who will buy? Shining load, delicate, bright, rainbow tinted. Rainbow tinted means having the colors of the rainbow, the shades of the rainbow. Lustrous tokens, they are symbols of light. Radiant lives, they bring happiness to life. Bangles have a very important religious and cultural significance. I'm sure all those students who are from India will already know this, that wearing of bangles, removing of bangles, breaking of bangles, these are all symbolic gestures in the Indian culture. So radiant lives for happy daughters and happy wives. This is how the description is given. Now the next stanza talks about young girls, the maiden, the young girl. All the colors are described. Silver and blue, and flushed is pink, Light colors. Usually girls, especially in Victorian England, Sarojini Naidu had a lot of impact of the British culture because they all grew up in an India which was ruled by the Britishers. So these colors, these light colors, are usually worn by young girls. Young girls don't usually in the Victorian ages wear colors which are very bright. That was the Victorian era. They never used to wear. In India, this is not the same. Everybody wears all colors. The brighter, the better. So she doesn't put that here. Silver, blue, pink, flushed like the buds that dream on the tranquil brow of a woodland stream. See, long sentence. It runs into two lines, but it goes on. Some are aglow with the bloom, like a small flower which comes, the bud which comes out in front of the newborn leaves. Two light green leaves are there, small bud is coming out of that, light color. So that is how it is. So you can see a variety of, adjectives are used. Description is that all the bangles we are selling, these kind of colors are for you young girls. Please come and buy. That's what they are saying. Now we move on to the last two stanzas. Now here the third stanza talks about the bride because bridal makeup, bangles are very important. Now see how the colors have changed. The fields of sunlit corn, when corn is in full bloom, you get bright yellow color. Or flame, orange and red, flame of the marriage fire. We know how marriages are performed, where the fire is lit and everybody, the bride and groom go round the fire. So the color of the fire. See how life is being described, culture is being described, but by the bangle seller to sell the bangles. Maybe her heart has desires. Therefore, all the colors, the hue is maybe a difficult word. Hue implies a color. Hue implies a shade of a color. Tinkling, luminous, tender and clear. These are all adjectives which describe two things, bridal laughter and bridal tear. These happy occasion, but when the bride is going away, also sorrowful occasion because she's leaving a life behind. These are all being described by the bangle seller and by the poet, not only for selling the bangles but also giving a cultural picture, an entire story of how life goes on. And then the bride in the fourth stanza becomes the mother. She is now old. She wears purple and grey colored bangles where there are golden marks, gold flecked, small dots of gold are there. She has finished half of her life because she has brought up children and she has served the household. She's done a lot of work. Sarojini Naidu is, I'm sorry, writing in 1912, not 1920 as I mentioned by mistake, 1912. And at that time, the women had, majority of women, not Sarojini Naidu herself, but majority of women had the house as the sphere of activity. They did not have much participation in public life. Sarojini Naidu herself became a politician later. She was a great freedom fighter also, but she was a poet too. And she is now describing that woman who would do a lot of housework, look after the house. She was the in charge of everything that is in the house, including the spiritual aspect. She worships at the side of the husband. We have a term for this, ardhangini, that is half a body. What every religious function, you need the husband and wife together. They have to be together. In Ramayana, when Sita was not available, there was a statue, golden statue of Sita, which was sitting there. So these are all cultural points which is mentioned. The beautiful adjectives which are taught here are adjectives which can color your expression, your language. So this listening skill is a very important skill for you because you have listened to the music, You have also seen the rhythm, the rhyme scheme. Corn and morn, 2 lines. Fire and desire, 2 lines. Clear and tear, 2 lines. Rhyming with each other. Grey and midway, blessed and breast, pride and side. You can easily see. So what is happening here is that the poet is using language, a language which you can learn from to improve your expression. We have done 2 exercises of listening. That should be sufficient listening practice for you to start with. Now for a few days, go on practicing whatever you get. Listen to many passages or read those passages which you listen to, because now all videos usually come with lines which are scrolled, and you can read also, but don't do it together. Listen first without the distraction of the text, and then read the text and listen again. And once you've finished listening, try to summarize it in your own words and speak it aloud. All the best. Watch and subscribe, and try to improve yourself as much as you can based on the suggestions given in the video. Thank you.